G'day, I'm that Celtics guy. I'm here to bring you some regular content about the Boston Celtics, hopefully doing it a couple times a week, sometimes maybe once a week, other times maybe almost daily. I think as free agency kind of picks up and then as the season progresses, we'll see how that goes. But start off with, obviously there's been some big moves. Quite an interesting start to Brad Stevens' career as he's not a general manager, is he? He's a president of basketball. But if we just have a look at what occurred sort of over the weekend, first we got rid of Thomson's contract, which was a bad contract, but I actually didn't mind him. I think as the season kind of progressed, he felt like he came into his role a lot more, and what a lot of people tend to forget is for the first half of the season it was asked to kind of play in sort of like a double big lineup with Tice where it wasn't working, but as the season went on, obviously we traded away Tice, that freed up minutes for him at centre as backup for Williams. So he's not a bad player, but it was a bad contract in terms of cost over the value that he was giving us. And what we needed going forward. So we've traded him as part of a freeway trade between Sacramento and Atlanta. And in return we got Kris, Dunn and Fernando, who I'll talk about them shortly. And then only a few hours later, we traded away Richardson for Moses Brown and a second round pick. Now I've seen a lot of people venting their frustration about Josh Richardson and giving up Moses Brown. So it's kind of where I want to start off with. So I'll quickly just touch on Moses Brown and what he was going to give us, and why maybe losing him I don't think is as bad as a lot of fans are seeming to think it is. So what he was a rough prospect. He had some pretty good upside. I don't think he was ever going to be an all-star, all-NBA kind of guy. To be honest, I think he'd be a decent role player. Celtics fans, I think, were particularly fond of him purely because he had he had that game against us with I think it was 20 points, 23 rebounds, something crazy like that. So he put up some big numbers, but you got to remember, that was on the Thunder, who were actively tanking. They had rested Horford, and the reason was he was old. So it's somewhat easy to put up big numbers when you're on a bad team and you're given a lot of minutes. He wouldn't get those kind of minutes here, no way in hell. And he wouldn't get the same opportunities. So he was down the pecking order, and we don't need youth at the moment. What we need is players that have experience, playoff experience. I'd like to see us go the way of getting a few more veterans. But in terms of what Richardson gives us over what Brown gives us, I think we are in a better spot. And I mean, if we're having a look at it, his most recent season was with the Mavs. He averaged 12.1 points, 2.6 assists, and 3.3 rebounds. Now, they're not crazy numbers. Nothing kind of stands out and go, wow, he's a great player. One thing that we need to think of, though, is he's been asked to play a different kind of role to when his value was kind of sky high back in that season, that last season with Miami. So with Philly and the Mavs, he's been asked to play off ball a lot more, so that's limited what he's able to do in terms of playmaking, but it also limits what he can do offensively, because he's just not getting the touches. He's just been asked to kind of be a spot-up shooter more than anything, and I mean, he's a career 35%er, so he's not a knockdown shooter. It's not something you're going to just turn around and go, yep, take as many shots as you want, but you're not worried too much if he's got the ball, and he's on. Yeah. But he does give you some shooting. So I think he's going to be. He will be a benefit because we need someone that can space the floor, even if it's not going to be an amazing spacer. He gives us something which is better than what we've really had, if we're going to be honest. And I'll get to kind of how I think he would fit into the lineup a bit later. But he also just gives us some insurance if Brown or Tatum were to get injured or rested, or even just when they're off the floor, because I think he's still going to go with leaving at least one of them on the floor at all times. But he can play that shooting guard, he can play that small forward, so he works well with both Tatum and Brown. I think with Brown he'll actually probably play a bit better, because Brown's not a great playmaker in his own right. So having someone that can actually playmake, that's going to be a big asset. I mean, all we need to do is look back to his season with Miami in 2018-2019. Averaged 4.1 assists, and that's because he was able to actually play on the ball a lot more. He was getting those touches, and he was able to kind of probe the defense, create his own shot, which meant he was also able to help others with theirs, because the defense had to respect him. So I like the pickup. It's not a pickup that's going to make us a finals contender, but it's one that does shore up our wing rotation, and that's something that we've really needed. Now, in terms of the Thomson for Dunn and Fernando, so first of all, like I said, it gets rid of Thomson's contract, but more importantly, it just frees up the minutes, because let's face it, out of those 40 minutes, most of it's going to be split between Williams and Horford. Depending on matchups, I can see Grant Williams getting some minutes. I can also see a number of games where he's having do not plays. So getting rid of Thomson, who, by all rights, should deserve some minutes, it just makes it a bit better. It's going to allow us to see how Williams is going to progress. I think if he can stay healthy, he's going to have a big year. And having Horford back around gives him someone that I don't think we need to worry about Williams becoming a 3-point shooter like Horford is. But, I mean, if he can at least threading from outside of the paint, that's fantastic. But then his playmaking and Horford's defense. Williams is a great shot blocker. I reckon he's going to lead. If he's healthy this season, he's going to lead the league in blocks. 100%. No doubt in my mind. If he can stay healthy and he can play 60 to 70 games in the year, he'll lead the league in blocking. Probably set some new records. But that's not the same as being a really great defensive player. Horford is, and that's where he's really underrated. He can sit back. He doesn't need to be the star of the show, but I know it's a couple of years ago now, but if we look back to when he was with us last time, he was able to defend against players like Embiid, who are really powerful down in the post, because he's a smart, savvy defensive player at that end of the floor. So that's the first thing. I'm really happy that we got rid of that. It's going to allow us to see Williams progress, and it also just gives us that steady veteran as well in Horford. Now, in terms of the pieces that we've got, Fernando is a non-factor. I think we'll move him as soon as we can. We're not going to cut him purely because we need as much salary as we can get. As much salary flexibility, so we're not just going to cut him, but we will try and trade him. Dunn, I don't think that he's with us by... Hopefully he's not with us by the start of the season, but I definitely don't think he'd be with us by the end of the trade deadline, not unless he has kind of a career resurgence and can fix up his shooting. But if he is there at the start of the season, what he does give us is he had some good perimeter defense and some ball movement to our second unit, which is something that we're going to need. We've got Pritchard there at point guard, but Pritchard's he's not a playmaker. Not at this stage of his career. Do I think he can progress to one? Yeah, I think he can. He's never going to be a great playmaker, but I think he can become someone that can average 4 assists in a game, 5 assists a game. Who knows? Depending on how long he plays and how he progresses, maybe even more. But I think that's kind of what we're looking at with Pritchard. So having someone else like Dunn who can do that, but also just give you a bit more defensive versatility than what Pritchard's going to give you, I think that is valuable. But at the same time, I don't think he's going to get there. He's going to be there by the end of the trade deadline, not on the series that researchers said. All in all, I think that we won both of these trades. None of them are blockbusters, but we gained a lot more cap flexibility, especially for not this free agency, but the upcoming free agency. So that's kind of signalling to me, and I know other people have also kind of been hinting at it. Maybe we're trying to get some flexibility to sign Bradley Beal in free agency. So if that's the case, I'm all for that. I'm still not sure how exactly that's going to fit. I'm not all in on the Bradley Beal to Boston situation. I might talk about that a bit more in a later podcast, unless it all goes ahead. But in terms of, I guess, our current lineup, I mean, this is a bad team at the moment. I'm just going to do starter and their immediate backup. But I mean, if we look at point guard at the moment, you're going to have Smart with Pritchard coming off the bench. Now, for me at shooting guard, I would have Neesmith starting with Langford coming off the bench. Now, the reason I'd like Neesmith to start is I think towards the end of last season, we saw him kind of get over that hump. He started showing what he could be. I think he's a guy that can be a 15 point per game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists kind of player. He's just someone that's going to be there, kind of stabilize your offense a bit once he kind of calms down. But he also gives you that hustle and that energy. Whereas Langford's a playmaker, but on the starting lineup, we don't need another playmaker. We need someone that can shoot. We need that spacing. It's going to allow those lanes to open up for Brown and Tatum. And Smart's not going to... I don't think Smart's going to take as many shots as he previously did, because he's going to be asked to play in a different role if he is our starting point guard. He likes to get the ball, run around off ball, get the ball and shoot. And then at the times where he's been asked to play at point guard, he kind of slows down a bit. He's a bit smarter with his shots. So I think Neesmith will kind of be able to take up some of those shots. We'll see him progress. And he's shown that he can play defense. It took a while, but another 3-and-D guy, I'm happy with it. Small forward, Brown, of course. Power forward, Tatum. Now at center, I'm happy with either or. At this stage, I've picked Williams to be our starting center, but I'd be happy with Horford as well, especially if you're kind of worried about how Neesmith's going to go, if you're also a bit worried about what's Smart going to do. Is he going to still kind of get in those moments where he's just chucking up heat checks? So if you think that it's going to be one of those nights, I'm happy with Horford starting. I think they're very interchangeable, but ultimately by the end of the season, I think Williams would be our starter, and I think at the start of the season as well, there's a very good chance he will be. Going back to the backups, so I kind of skipped over that. Small forward, Josh Richardson, power forward, Jabari Parker. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I don't see too much of a spot in the rotation for Grant Williams. Carson Edwards, God, if there's a way for us to get rid of him, fantastic. Ojeley's not coming back. Luke Conn not coming back. Don't talk about Tucker and Tremont, they're not coming back. And Evan Fournier, I don't think he is coming back. I think that's why we made that trade for Richardson, because you've seen these reports. Fournier's camp, they're asking for $20 million, 4-year, $80 million contract. He's a great player. We use a big chunk of that TPE to actually get him, but at $20 million, I don't think Fournier's the player that we want to be spending that money on. Now, a player that we could potentially look at if we wanted to do $20 million would be Lonzo Ball. And I know there are a lot of people, it's kind of split down the middle. There are a lot of people that really, really like the idea of Ball coming, and a lot of people that don't. I'm in the camp that thinks Ball would be a good addition. We can pretty much just take Naismith out of the starting lineup, move Smart over to shooting guard, and Ball at point guard, of course. That gives us some elite playmaking, gives some really good defense. Like, people sleep on how good defensively Lonzo Ball actually is. Like, he can be an all-defensive kind of guard, I think, in a couple of years. And his shooting, it's getting better. He's never going to be an elite shooter, but he's getting to the stage where you've kind of got to respect the shot. You can't just leave him completely unguarded. I mean, now that we've got all these other pieces, who knows? I mean, Pelicans do hold the rights for him. So I think depending on what the contract was that was offered to Ball, and also what the Pelicans do, there's been a lot of stuff about them trying to look for more of a veteran point guard. So there's talk about Chris Paul, and there's talk about Kyle Lowry, so we need to see how that all kind of unfolds as well. But I mean, I wouldn't be upset if we gave up someone who I think is going to be a kind of a poor man's Draymond Green, which still can be a great player in Grant Williams. Give them Kris Dunn. And I don't think we really need much more use. So I'd even be happy with us throwing in a first-round pick, 2022. If there's a way for us to chuck in a couple of second-round picks instead, of course, I'm going to be happy with that. But that's a player I think is who I'd have my eye on. There is talk that DeMar DeRozan is looking at taking a real significant pay cut, so maybe we could look at a sign and trade with the Spurs. There's talk about him wanting to go to LA. I mean, all the veterans do at the moment, but can you imagine if he went to the Lakers and you've got Westbrook, DeRozan, LeBron, Davies, chuck in someone else. Like, where's your shooting coming from? Where's your spacing coming from? So I don't think that's going to be the right situation for DeRozan. And yeah, Celtics may not necessarily be the absolute best, but if he's kind of at that stage where he's like, I've made a lot of money, I kind of just really want to get that ring. I want to go somewhere where I'm going to be wanted and respected. I think the Celtics give him that. Celtics fans, we've got history with the Raptors. We've seen them a fair bit in the playoffs, and I think we've got that healthy kind of respect for DeRozan. I think he's someone that would give us some good defense. He's going to give us some playmaking. His playmaking very underrated up until this most recent season. I think he's kind of showed what he can do there. And then he's not giving you shooting. I mean, God, I wouldn't want him taking a free. But he gives you that mid-range. It's still potentially getting out of the paint slightly. So that's Ball or DeRozan be the players, but it all depends on kind of what happens with the rest of the league. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. But if you did like this, give us a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Any feedback you've got, let me know. And stay tuned. I'll be uploading something else later on. Thank you.